Several Conservative MPs are expressing support for party leader Pierre Poilievre after he lost both the federal election and his seat on Monday. The loss puts the party in an awkward position of having to choose an MP to serve as party leader in the House of Commons. Ontario MP Arpan Khanna said on social media that Mr. Poilievre, quote, delivered the highest vote percentage in modern Conservative history. A Conservative MP would likely have to step down to allow Mr. Poilievre to run for a seat, but the party has not yet answered questions on the possibility of running elsewhere. However, there is a growing rift between the federal Conservatives and the Ontario Conservatives. In an interview with CBC, Durham Member of Parliament Jamil Javani accused Doug Ford of supporting the Liberals.
Doug Ford just went through an election. I have differences of opinion with him. I don't like how he's managed healthcare or education, but out of respect, we didn't say anything. Federal party, we didn't get in his way. When it was our turn to run an election, he couldn't stay out of our business, always getting his criticisms and all his opinions out, distracting our campaign, trying to make it about him, trying to position himself as some kind of political genius. I see Doug Ford as a problem for Ontario and for Canada. I think he's not doing a great job in running this province, and now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government, and it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better, and now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca, and now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney. And I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
And in response, Premier Doug Ford accused the federal Conservatives of telling their staff to not help the PCs in the last provincial election.
I shouldn't interfere in the federal election. Last time I checked, Pierre Poilievre never came out in our election. Matter of fact, him or one of his lieutenants told every one of his members, don't you dare go out and help the PCs. Isn't that ironic? But anyways, I'm not going to dig deep into this. The people spoke, and I have no say in who people vote for. But I'll tell you one thing. We have a government, democratically elected. I will hold them accountable. I'll hold them accountable like I would, no matter if it's a Conservative government or a Liberal government. My interest is protecting the people of Ontario, and I will be all over this government. They know I will be, as I was before, about being tough on crime.
Joining us now is our correspondent, Wyatt Sharpe, for more on the controversy. Wyatt, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Always happy to.
Now, where did this feud start between the Ontario PCs and the federal Conservatives?
Yeah, I mean, it really all started, I guess you could go back really to Corey Teneycke, who was Doug Ford's campaign manager in 2018, 2022, and of course, the most recent provincial election as well. And he's a noted political commentator on a variety of different news programs. He came out and openly criticized the Poilievre Conservatives for not really getting away from kind of some of the issues that had been dogging the election campaign and talking about some of the issues that voters care about. And so that ultimately led to Poilievre come out and and a lot of Poilievre's folks, and of course Jenny Byrne, who is also Doug Ford's principal secretary. There's kind of been this full circle moment of just people on the Poilievre campaign and people from Doug Ford's team going back and forth at one another. You know, it's interesting, you mentioned in the introduction that a lot of the Poilievre folks right now are using kind of the reasoning that Poilievre received kind of the highest vote in a number of years for the Conservative Party as a reason to kind of define success for them in this election. And it kind of reminds me of 2020 when Donald Trump lost the presidential election and he came out and he said, well, we still received upwards of 70 million votes, which of course is just because voter turnout was higher, of course, as it was in this election campaign as well. So that's certainly one component to kind of discuss with respect to this. But I mean, I also find it a little bit ironic that Jamil Javani and, other MPs within the Conservative Party are coming out and criticizing Doug Ford and the provincial Conservatives. Meanwhile, Doug Ford has won 3 consecutive majority governments, all while the federal Conservatives just lost their 4th consecutive election.
Well, Jamil Javani accused Premier Ford of effectively backing the Liberals. But how credible are these claims and what evidence, if any, does he have to support them?
Yeah, I mean, I posted about this on social media as well. I think, saying that certain party members aren't conservative enough or putting blame and creating excuses as to why you lost the election is exactly the type of patterns that will ultimately lead to you losing the next election campaign as well. So certainly, I and many others have been critical of that. But I do think that with respect to Doug Ford, he's just governing, as he'll say, on, kind of a Team Canada basis right now, especially with these tariffs and some of the other geopolitical challenges that have been present in kind of our political climate as of late. Intergovernmental cooperation between the federal government and the province is certainly something of importance. And so for the Conservatives to come out and, call Doug Ford a liberal, all because he's willing to kind of collaborate with the federal government, seems a little bit ironic and certainly in bad taste.
Now, you did just touch on this, but how much could this feud really divide the Conservative Party of Canada as MPs begin to point the finger of blame at other people?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just the PC party in Ontario who's casting kind of doubt on the federal Conservatives. You saw the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, come out and kind of exercise his right to be critical as well of the federal Conservatives. It's interesting because usually, for whatever reason, if a party leader is unsuccessful in an election campaign, almost immediately after, there's talk about his or her future. And for whatever reason, Pierre Poilievre, despite not even being able to win his own seat in a riding he's held for more than 20 years, since 2004, has just kind of this grasp on the Conservative Party where people are not calling for him to step down like they were in 2022 or 2021 rather, under Aaron O'Toole, where you saw kind of consecutively one MP after the other come out and say that it was time for Mr. O'Toole to step down. So that's certainly interesting to me. But I do think that eventually you'll start to see kind of an increased divide within the party. This election was supposed to be very winnable for the Conservatives. And, the fact that Pierre Poilievre is the best candidate to go up against Mark Carney, according to some MPs, for a rematch, despite not being able to win again this time, even when they had a 25+ point lead in the polls in January, is certainly something that is bound to get some criticism moving forward.
And what are the possible scenarios for Poilievre's political future if he doesn't secure a seat soon?
Yeah, well, the minimum amount of time with respect to how soon he could secure a seat is 47 days, because, of course, the government still has to get sworn in. Mark Carney would need to call a by-election. But if I was Mark Carney, if I was the prime minister, politically speaking and strategically speaking, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be in a big rush to try and have Pierre Poilievre become an MP again in the House of Commons, because, of course, that is one good thing and one kind of praise we can give to Pierre Poilievre is he's very sharp and very strong when he's in the House of Commons. So Mark Carney obviously would not want that to happen. And from a procedural standpoint as well, Pierre Poilievre right now is not the leader of the official opposition, despite being the leader of the Conservative Party, meaning his salary has to be paid by the Conservative Party. He has to move out of Stornoway, which is the official residence for the leader of the opposition. And so it's going to create kind of some changes in his personal life as well. So it's not really unprecedented that a party leader is not an MP. You saw that for kind of the first 2 weeks of Mark Carney's prime ministership. It just certainly makes things much more difficult. And now the Conservatives are going to have to look to appoint someone to be kind of the leader of the opposition, which is likely probably going to be the House leader. You've heard people like Andrew Scheer's name be floated around as well.
Well, you did just mention Andrew Scheer, but if it's not Poilievre, are there any other names being thrown around right now to replace Pierre Poilievre other than Andrew Scheer, as you've just mentioned?
Yeah, well, I mean, Andrew Scheer wouldn't necessarily be kind of a permanent replacement. He might be someone that the party looks to for an interim leader or someone to lead the party in the House, as he's done for the past number of years under Pierre Poilievre and even Aaron O'Toole as well. But you mentioned this, and it's a big problem that not only the Conservatives, but especially the NDP is having right now. And that's with respect to the fact that there are really no obvious frontrunners for either of the two parties' leadership contests, assuming the Conservatives eventually will have to enter one. For the NDP, as an example, like you have Alexandre Boulari's from riding in Quebec, Rosemont Le Petit-Patry. He's certainly one example for the NDP's leadership because he was one of the few MPs to hold on to his riding, much less hold on to it in Quebec. For the Conservatives, I mean, you're likely to have a number of people possibly step forward. The question is, are they going to be able to do what Mr. Poilievre failed to do? And again, the Conservatives have really experimented with all kinds of conservatism at this point. Pierre Poilievre, who's kind of that alt-right portion of the party, Aaron O'Toole, who's
Wyatt,
really
I'm
himself
so sorry. I
with
do have
various
to
forms.
interrupt you. We've ran out of time,
Go
but
ahead.
thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you.